I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will be the Spanish language interpreter. Buenas noches. Yo voy a ser su intérprete de español. Mi nombre es Sofía Rubalcaba. Si alguien necesita interpretación en español, por favor pase a la mesa atrás y le voy a dar unos audífonos. Gracias.
We also have headsets for the hearing impaired available, so if anyone needs those, we can also get those for you. And we will start off with introductions, proclamations, presentations, and recognitions.
Thank you very much. At the last board meeting, Annette Cordero shared information on Domestic Solutions poster contest, What is Love? And this evening we have Christy Haynes from Domestic Violence is here, along with on display the posters. I'd like first, before I talk about the posters, to have Christy come forward and talk a little bit about the contest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for inviting us to come tonight. I'm excited to see all the students here as well. I'm Christy Haynes. I'm the Director of Prevention Education for Domestic Violence Solutions. And there's three statistics that I just want to point out. 1 in 3 teens in our schools are experiencing dating violence. And what we know from surveys is 2/3 never tell. We know that students who are experiencing dating violence have higher rates of school violence, dropout rates, drug abuse, high-risk sexual behavior, and suicide. One of the best ways that I know to bring awareness to this topic is to really bring teens into the room, into the schools, by using their voice and their image and their creativity to bring awareness to what this looks like. And we have the second year of our poster contest, so we go out to all the high schools and we invite classes, graphic design classes. Dan Williams is here tonight from Santa Barbara Mad Academy, and most of his teachers participated in this contest this year. We got 144 submissions this year from every high school in the district. Out of that 144, we narrowed it down to the top 26. And then out of that came your finalists, and all of the students that won tonight are here. And I think you're going to be recognizing them individually.
Yes.
So that's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. We did invite the students with their winning entries, and you can look at them from left to right. I'm going to read them. The Teen Choice Award, Chase Duraz, Santa Barbara High School, 11th grade. Chase, are you here? Please stand to be recognized. Congratulations. Oh, excuse me. That was a typographic. Thank you very much. Unknown participant in the audience. We're not competitive. Third place, Claire Lowe, Santa Barbara High School, 11th grade. Third place, Veronica Jacinto, San Marcos High School, 9th grade. Second place, Cassandra Bustos, San Marcos High School, 11th grade. First place winner, Alec Larson, Santa Barbara High School, 11th grade. Congratulations to all the students, and I've had an opportunity prior to the meeting to look at those incredible posters. What a testament to the talent that resides in our community and our young people, and also to the incredible work that our teachers do each and every day. Dan, thank you for being here this evening. Appreciate it very much. And I would also like to acknowledge the work of a Santa Barbara High School student, Mars Miller, who created a public service announcement, and his 30-second PSA can be seen on Vimeo at the address provided to you on this slip of paper in the back of the room. And it's a 30-second PSA, and it's fantastic, and I'm certain he's a Mad Academy student as well, Dan? No? Wow. Cinematic Arts Academy, okay. Well, congratulations to all the students and their parents for supporting them in the great work that they've done And thank you to Domestic Violence Solutions for having this contest and being such a valuable partner to our schools and our community. Appreciate it very much. Annette?
Well, I think I mentioned this at our last meeting, but those folks who did this work were not here. I just wanted to mention that I have shared your posters and the material that came forth with my students at Santa Barbara City College, and they were so impressed that these posters were created by high school students. They took it to heart and they have been really interested. So I wanted you to know that you have gotten the word out to a lot of young people and a lot of people in our community who will share it with others as well. So your work has already had an impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to all the students. And despite a power outage at the event, our students were still able to shine at the February 23rd County Spelling Bee. And the winners are, as predicted from our district, Shayona White, a Goleta Valley Junior High School 7th grader who took first place in the junior high division. Congratulations. Alexis Villa Tavera, a San Marcos 9th grader who took second place in that same division. Rafael Saavedra, a 7th grader at La Colina, took third place. And the elementary level winner was Max Rafael, a Washington Elementary School 6th grader. And the two top winners go on to the state level competition on May 12th in San Rafael. And we'll make sure that we recognize those students when they're able to come to a board meeting. They were not able to attend this evening. The February issue of Investment Matters is also at the back of the room, and this is a great document that provides the community with information on the Measure I 2008 parcel tax. It's also posted on the district website, and hard copies are available at the back of the room as stated. Everyone needs to get ready for the great theater as our schools continue to showcase tremendous student talent. And another flyer is available for everyone at the back of the room regarding Theater Fest, which has the dates, times, and ticket prices for all the upcoming performances. This week, Dos Pueblos and San Marcos High Schools are holding college fairs as a part of their higher education week and their focus on college-going culture at each school. An event I love and happy to see returning is La Colina's A Walk Through the Middle Ages, which takes place on March 15th, beginning at 9 a.m. And the public is invited to see the living history research exhibits that are created by the school's 7th grade social studies students. And before I conclude, I'd like to take a moment to express our district's heartfelt condolences regarding the tragic loss of 3 lives at Chardon High School in Ohio this week. 2 others were wounded in Monday's shooting. School safety remains the #1 priority for all our schools, and our thoughts and prayers go out to all of those touched by this senseless act of violence. And this concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board, comments or correspondence? Mr. Herron.
Thank you. Just a few things. One, I attended in place of Mrs. Deacon the Junior League elected officials night and was on a panel with several other elected officials talking to the Junior League members. I did sort of joke with them that I hope they don't attack this board for not being, for women not being involved, and don't come after me. I don't know how well that went over. I also attended the Just Community's 10th anniversary. It was a very nice event. A couple others were there too, and they do so much for the various schools that it was nice to see them honor their 10 years of involvement. I went to a Lions Club meeting. I was one of the judges for their speech contest. I'd like to thank David Holmes from San Marcos High School, who has urged students to be involved in that year after year. And the 2 students that were there giving speeches based upon what can we learn from the past to help our current political leaders. And they had some real good topics and thoughts on that topic, so it was very well done. I did go to the Open Alternative School for their moment of honoring their deceased teacher, Carmen Alexander. Carmen went to school with my children for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and my son in the 8th grade, I guess it was. So I remember her well as being a very, very positive, energetic young lady, which I gather now she took those traits to even higher degrees at Open Alternative. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heron. Ms. Cordero?
Well, I also wanted to echo Mr. Heron's sort of a memory of Ms. Alexander. We were just, I think, in shock, as everybody else was, to hear of her sudden passing, and it's a loss to our entire district. But I also wanted to mention that last Thursday, several of us attended a dinner in Buellton, honoring or recognizing a number of teachers who received grants this year for the innovative work that they are doing in our classrooms, and not just here in the Santa Barbara School District, but throughout the county. And it was quite an inspirational evening. One of our teachers, Mr. Behrens, you'll be happy to know from San Marcos, I'm sure you already know this, was the keynote speaker and was hugely inspirational to the audience, very well received. But it was just a joy to hear the kinds of things that teachers continue to do, either through their own innovative ways of securing funding or without funds, and just find innovative ways to reach out to the community as well as to their students. Many of the activities were community oriented and involved students working on behalf of other groups in the community to benefit needy families or disenfranchised groups. So it was just a thrilling evening. So I just want to acknowledge that teachers in general are a fabulous group of people, and we have some of the best ones here.
Thank you, Ms. Cordero. And I think that is it for board correspondence. Announcement of closed session action items, and I'd just like to announce that the board voted to reject the claim identified in B4. The motion was made by Mr. Heron and seconded by Ms. Cordero with a 4-0 vote. And that brings us to public comment.
We do have public comment. Let's see, we have 5 speakers. So what I'm going to do is call off the name of the first 3, if you could just be prepared to go in that order. And you'll have 3 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning as you speak. First up is Hvac Hernandez, followed by Nick Tonkin, followed by, and I'm sorry, it's a little difficult to read this printing. It might be Oike Hernandez, or maybe Mr. Hernandez, you can, is that the correct pronunciation?
Okay. But he may not show up.
Okay.
May I?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for your dedication to our children. I know it requires a lot for you to be on the board. It's not without sacrifice. I myself try to dedicate as much time as I can to the students. I work with the Math Academy in laying out the poster for the exhibit. If you want to go see it, it's at the Cota, the Brooks Gallery on Cota, 27 East Cota. You'll see the work of the math students. I also volunteer as a theater teacher, and as long as you mention the Theater Fest, you can come see the Magical Seaweed, which is an original play that the kids have written, incorporating environmental education and art, and we'll be performing at La Cumbre Junior High School. They kindly lend us their theater, because it's original theater, we need some good acoustics, and that theater really fits our purpose. So that's on March 16th and 17th. Thank you. I'm here to speak for appreciation for, as you can see, also for the school that I love, that the reason why I haven't gone back to my, and the reason why I became a US citizen, it's Open Alternative School. And we really are a community that, like you said, Mr. Heron, is positive and energetic. Carmen really represented the best of us. And we're trying to bring the best of us to the table to figure out what's next for our community. We understand there are some changes being proposed, including a change of leadership because of budget constraints, and we all understand that. We want you to be aware that our community has presented a possible solution for to go back to the way that our school used to work, which is we had a head teacher that worked with the teachers together to do a self-governance that is very democratic, which is the nature of our school. And we'd like for you to consider Dr. Cass to have that possibility on the table besides the other chance of bringing somebody from the outside. We do keep improving our school. We get people from the outside all the time. It's not that we don't want people from the outside. Every year we get new parents. I myself, I'm leaving alternative school as a parent. My kid is graduating 8th grade. Both of our kids have been there since kindergarten to 8th grade.
30 seconds.
And I'm very passionate about it, and I really want the spirit of OAS to survive. 30 seconds. That's basically it. And I'd like to use the next 30 seconds as silence for Carmen, a moment to remember Carmen.
All right, Nick Tonkin, followed by Hvac Hernandez. Kike? That's a cue? Thank
Yes,
you.
it's Kike. I'm also a parent at Open Alternative. I'm heartened to come here to your room and see that on the wall you have your core mission statement, the first part of which, I can't read it from here unfortunately anymore, but it basically says that the board is committed to a structure of shared leadership and education between parents, staff, teachers, community members. It's right there on your core beliefs, and that's extremely important to us at Open Alternative School. We believe that the world would be a better place if there were more collaborative decision making, if there were more consensus-based processes, if there was more restorative justice. And those values have been embodied in our school for over 35 years, as you know. In recent times, the school has gone through some turmoil, as you also know. We've had some staffing issues having to do with seniority. We've had a big decline in our student enrollment because of the board's vote to do away with inter-district transfers. And it has been a time of turmoil for our school. During that time, the district changed the leadership structure of Open Alternative and assigned an administrator from outside. This happened last year. That was the first year that our test scores took a decline. So when we ask you to allow us to work with the superintendent to design a system of shared governance among teachers and parents, embodying the head teacher concept that has worked so well for our school for so long, it's because we have results to prove it. It's worked well in academic results as well as the social results and leadership of the graduates of Open Alternative School that everybody knows so much about. You've had them in here, the Berkeley graduates, the leaders, the people that Ed and longtime Santa Barbarans and Annette have known since they were small. What we have in the world today is all too much top-down, hierarchical decision-making, usually by white men. There's a lot of conflict in the world. There are a lot of wars. There's a lot of non-productivity. A lot of the great human energy just goes to waste. And at Open Alternative School, our system is a circular, inclusive environment in which all the energy that these wonderful children have, all the potential that they contain, is focused through a group structured, a child-centered learning environment. I know that you board members are familiar with this. Most of you have visited OAS. Our key values at our school
30 seconds.
are also the same ones that you espouse in your placard over there. The core group or school meeting, class meeting that we call it at our lunchtime session is the most important part of our day, where students can express their emotions and needs. And so what we're asking in a nutshell is that you, the school board, continue to allow us at our school to have a leadership structure that mirrors the educational philosophy that we're imparting to our children. In other words, shared governance and shared leadership. And we look forward to continuing our conversations with Mr. Cash that we began last night. He made assurances to us that we would be able to be involved in the process, and we look forward to that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kike Hernandez, followed by Marcia Eichelberger, followed by Kate Smith. Okay. Okay. Marcia Eichelberger, followed by Kate Smith, followed by Carol Leaf, or Leaf.
Good evening, members of the board and the administration. I'm Marcia Eichelberger. I'm the parent of 2 children who receive special education services in the district, and I'm also the president of the Autism Society of Santa Barbara. And I came here for a couple reasons this evening. First of all, I wanted to thank you for taking action at the last board meeting and taking the recommendation of the district special ed Parent Advisory Council to make inclusion a philosophy of the district. I very much appreciate that, and I know that many in the special education, in our special education family, thank you as well. Secondly, I want to thank the board and the administration for continuing a policy of transparency by releasing the follow-up letter to the Hvac report. It's an action of good faith for the special education community, and we very much appreciate that you did that for us. In special education, our work is never done, but I'd like to take a moment to thank Dr. Mills and her passionate and committed staff for making the strides that they have made in collaboration with members of the special education community. I'd like to note that the Hvac team acknowledged the importance of stability in our special ed leadership, and I very much appreciate the tenacity of Dr. Mills and her team for hanging in there despite the challenges that they face daily. So thank you, Dr. Mills, thank you, board, and thank you, administration.
Kate Smith, followed by Carol Leaf.
Members of the Santa Barbara School District Board of Education. Our country is in a revolution, and this Thursday, March 1st, the last front of the Occupy movement has been declared. Occupy education. There is an education politico-industrial complex. There is deep-seated, widespread school and government corruption. Taxpayer-paid lawyers collude, conspire, and cover up wrongdoing. And the retaliation against whistleblowers is rampant and severe. I was arrested at a school board meeting. That's public property. It was a combination of a 15-year attack on my family and me in retaliation for my whistleblowing against this corrupt educational system. I now suffer from legal abuse syndrome, and the case is in appeal. I will be serving my 100 hours of community service by occupying the public podium and occupying the corrupt courts. I call, as we all do, for child-centered, teacher-directed, and parent-involved schools. This is the year of the co-op declared by the United Nations. And I know that truth will out and justice will prevail. I have a Tuesday night commitment to singing with the Wonder Choir, so I will warm up with this song. We, the people, are rising today. We love our children, you don't. We'll work with our schools and we'll all be okay. Leave your keys on your desks, 'cause you won't. Si se puede, and yes we can. Expose corruption, we must. Get you out of our schools, 'cause you lie, cheat, and steal.
30 seconds.
You've betrayed our children and trust. J'accuse, madame. J'accuse.
Carol Leaf, and if you'll correct my pronunciation if I'm doing that wrong when you come up to the podium.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Leaf, and you pronounced it right. I live in Montecito, but everything that happens in Santa Barbara affects us there. I have a very short comment. It seems to me grossly unfair that we're spending about $500 million on an extra lane on a freeway when we're taking $20 million away from schools. What the problems with schools are is not really the point. But it seems to me that there's a structural deficiency in the way we fund schools. Montecito put in a $20 million roundabout that fire trucks can't get around, that Vaughn's trucks can't get around, which has, in effect, made Hermosillo Drive, which is a very nicely well-manicured street, residential side street, into a truck stop. So I think that, I don't know whether it's within your purview to address the structural issues, but these little barrels of funding for this one and that one and the other thing that sort of are hermetically sealed from one another just seems absurd to me. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
All right, and that concludes our public comment. And now we move on to acceptance of donations.
Move to accept with appreciation.
Second?
Oh, yes.
I
Mr.
just
Mayor?
have to make a comment on one of them. There's a $1,000 donation in there from a group called NRT. And I just need to make people aware that NRT is really Coldwell Banker. And last summer, I had a call from the president of the Coldwell Banker International Company, and they were having a international conference at Hvac, and wanted to know if I could arrange some entertainment, some musical for them. And I said, sure. So I called Carolyn Terriaca out at San Marcos High School and put her in contact with the president of NRT, and they arranged to go out to the dinner at the Baccara and sing for the group. And they arranged a $500 contribution. And I got this note from the president after the event just to say how thrilled we were. Her group received 2 standing ovations, many tears in the room, so powerful, so wonderful. Thank you. And they increased the donation voluntarily to $1,000. They doubled it. So I was just very pleased with that, because it's a company I was associated with for so long. So it was just nice the way it all came together, and Carolyn was absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Herron. And I think we're ready for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And now we move on to the consent agenda. Board members, are there any items that you'd like to pull?
I'll pull D3, D7, and D9. D3 just for some comments, and D7 and D9 I'd like to see put in with the conversation of E1.
Move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second?
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. One absent. And now we will return to items D3, D7, and D9 at the end of our regular agenda. And now we're moving on to our action agenda with E1, approval of reduction in particular kinds of services and adoptions of resolution. And Dr. Cash or?
We have
to
Ann
speak?
Peak here.
Okay.
Good evening. Well, I am back here, unfortunately, as I have been many times, based on the unknown budget cuts and unknown state ballot initiatives as well as a few other things. Unfortunately, we are going to have to reduce particular kinds of services again. So what you have before you is the reduction in force of particular kinds of services. Obviously, our hope is that some decisions will be made that will enable us to rescind some of these prior to the end of the school year. But unfortunately, because of the large deficit, we are asking that you approve this reduction in force.
Board, any comments or feedback?
I just have a question. In the memo from Dr. Cash, you indicate that there are no further, you are further notified that no probationary or permanent certificate employees with less seniority is retained.
Mhm.
But then the actual resolution, do they carve out some people that,
Those are two actually very different things.
that's what I was wondering.
What this is saying is that in these particular areas of elementary computer typing, math, English theater, social science, biology, and geoscience, health, PE, and child development, of that group of teachers, there are no less senior teachers that are retained, with the exception of those things that you find in the resolution itself, which are referred to as skips. And those are things where the core essential function of the job, for one reason or another, is allowing those services of those particular teachers and certificated staff to be retained.
So my question is, I noticed IB Harding University is down there,
Correct.
and I noticed that the DP Engineering is on there. Is there any way to include OAS on there based upon the same type of criteria, that it's the only open choice school, it's the only K to 8?
Well, I have two things that I think I can address with this. One is, in front of an administrative law judge, I don't know that I could actually make that argument that there is something about the core essential function of teaching in that particular elementary school that would allow it to be a skip. The second thing, though, is in looking at the numbers of teachers that are being laid off and reduced, those people that we've given the notices to, Open Alternative has not been impacted this year.
I thought I saw one teacher on there, David
There's
Archer.
a temporary teacher. But temporary teachers, based on the education code, are notified at the beginning of their position and at the end of their position that that position is ending. Those teachers are temporary based on the fact that we have staff who are on leave of absence, as well as because they're funded with soft money that we never know from year to year whether we're getting that money back or not.
I don't know Mr. Archer. I haven't met Mr. Archer. I saw him at OAS. I heard a great deal about him in the past couple years. The fact that it's could be described as a devastating effect on the upper end of that school, those things don't play a role?
No, because his position was offered as a temporary assignment and it hasn't been changed from anything other than temporary.
So there's no way to carve something like that out?
I don't believe that that argument could be made in front of an administrative law judge.
How do you argue Harding?
The argument with Harding has to do with the fact for them to get their IB, we have to show proof to the certification people, if you will, that there have been no changes on their staff. And it's truly a one-year only thing. It's so that they can get their IB certification. They're temporary. I will say they do have temporary teachers on their list that are being released.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Parker?
I guess that I will follow up on that.
Okay.
In that, to me, Harding IB makes some sense. Those teachers have had now years of specialized training. I guess my question is to the DP Engineering Academy teachers, what sort of specialized training have they had? And then the other question is core knowledge. Those teachers are trained every year. Why is core knowledge not? I mean, could this affect the community academy in a way that it shouldn't if Harding is being?
DP is very easy for me to address, actually,
Okay,
because
DP.
those teachers actually have all been engineers in their pre-education life. So they come to the table with an engineering background. As for core knowledge, it's not a certification piece. Our issue with the IB is that in order for Harding to receive their certification from IB, they have to show the stability. Core knowledge doesn't have that certification piece.
I guess I question that in the sense, especially if it's for Harding, that it's misleading to the IB committee if this is a one-year skip, if this is not something that's done because these teachers are trained. It should be because of what the teachers inherently have and not be a reaction to an outside force. And so that's a question mark for me. And I don't know if it's worth further discussion or not. The other piece that I just want to say before somebody else takes the mic is just that it's nothing that we ever want to do every year. I mean, and it comes up every single year, unfortunately, because we've had so many years of budget cuts. Huge number this year. And I really want to call out elementary, 22 teachers being notified. So I hope, as you said, Ms. Peak, that it comes back as reductions in force that we can rescind. But I certainly don't want to do this. I know none of us here wants to do this.
Dr. Cash, did you want to respond to that?
I just was going to comment that the California International Baccalaureate Organization made it very clear to me that having the same staff that had been there through the certification process was the essential element. And when I queried as to whether this would be a permanent skip, the answer was you will have the opportunity to train additional staff post your certification as a PYP school at Harding University Partnership. So that led me to believe that at a later date, because of that, it would pose the same or similar status as Santa Barbara Community Academy or Open Alternative. And it could or could not be considered, according to what Ms. Peak says that she would feel comfortable testifying in front of an ALJ about.
Thank you. Ms. Cordero?
Well, I had a question regarding the DP Engineering Academy as well. So the skip is based on who is there now. But does that mean that in the future, if one of those teachers resigns, that it will only be open to people who have been
Our goal would be
engineers?
My understanding with the Engineering Academy is that the goal has been to have teachers that have come from that sector. From year to year, the information that's here in terms of what can be a skip can change, and it has changed from year to year. At this present time, though, of the teachers that could potentially be impacted, the one teacher in particular actually has the engineering background piece.
Okay. The other question I had was, you indicate that there are 10 in English and theater, and you noted that the credentials for English are what are required for the teaching in theater arts.
Mm-hmm.
But my question was, of the number that we are actually identifying, how many of them are English and how many of them are in theater?
I don't have that broken down. Part of that is because a lot of our English teachers may pick up 1 or 2 periods, which would be 40% of their assignment. So it's not broken down necessarily between the English and the theater.
Okay, because that seems like my concern is that's a large number in a core area if we're actually, if the majority of those are actually in English. If it's kind of evenly split, then it's not as large a number. So, do you have a general sense of if it's heavily weighted one or the other?
No.
Okay.
I can't.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of them are the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Parker?
Well, I guess my question on that, and maybe this is a question for Dr. Cash, I don't know. It is a large number, and I'm wondering if what's driving it is the possible elimination of 9th grade class size reduction in English. If
That is correct.
where
That's a contributing factor.
So that would be on the English side then.
Mr. Herron?
I mean, it really bothers me to do this. When we have out there the potential of considering furlough days, and to disrupt this many people and send out these letters, and then continue negotiations. To me, I would rather have had the negotiations ended so we know which ones we give notices to and not disrupt all these people. It just bothers me from a process standpoint. I don't know when negotiations are going to continue with the union or how long it takes. How long do negotiations go on before this is resolved?
They go on until until we come to an agreement. And
This-
we're required by Education Code to notice teachers by March 15th, and then to have the board affirm their layoff status in May. So, of course, we would hope that we would have negotiations wrapped up as quickly as possible, but they go until we have a tentative agreement.
Does this action take sort of a burden off the process that they don't have to, doesn't have to be meaningful, quick decision-making, that we make this decision and it's so easy just to acquiesce to it because it's done?
No, I believe that both the district and the associations will continue to bargain in good faith.
And you say, in your opinion, you would not be able to argue a case for open alternative. What if we wanted you to try? What would happen?
There's no OAS people that are on this
On this list?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, well, and I'll just add that I think that, prior to getting to the board, and this is the second time I've had to go through this, I mean, the issue here, and I think we had this mentioned in our public comment earlier, is that there is a systemic problem. We are going to continue to have compelling interest compete against each other when we're only being funded by the state 80 cents to the dollar. That is a problem. That is a very big problem. And so I appreciate what my colleagues have said, because I see this as a loss all the way around. It doesn't matter what school's being exempted this time or next time. It's a huge loss for our schools, for our district, and most importantly for the students. And so I hope as we think about the future, that the community really thinks about what might be ways that we can help address this systemically, because my fear is that we may be having the same conversation again next year, and we will see compelling interests compete against each other. So I think we do have a public comment for this.
Yes, Lane Wheeler.
Thank you, Lane Wheeler, Santa Barbara Teachers Association. Wanted to address a couple of aspects of the questioning that I heard going on here. I think Ms. Limon alluded to this, that we have a number of competing interests. There are several solutions to this. We're currently bargaining in a very good faith effort to try and find a proper resolution. If your tea leaves could tell you what's going to happen in November, I think our negotiations could probably move forward more quickly, but I don't believe any of us know that. We don't know the outcome of a retirement annuity that is in process, and we certainly don't know where we will be in April, May, August, or November. If the board chose, the board could put off RIFs until a midsummer RIF. That would be an option that would take some of the concern off the plate. I'm not sure that's going to help anybody, but because I'm not sure if we'll have any more answers at that point. But I think really the key issue here is a twofold, and it's really a chance for us to act both locally and globally. We have a chance to pass a parcel tax. One of the reasons you didn't see math taking a big hit here is because a number of the teachers are funded out of the parcel tax. That would have probably been up there had the parcel tax not been previously passed. That's a chance for us to act immediately and in June, and to energize our community and call on our community to step forward in a common goal to help fund education the way it should be funded. We also have a second opportunity in November to pass the governor's initiative and to actually, again, create an income source that doesn't make us face this. Ms. Limona alluded to the fact that she's been through this twice. This is my 8th time going through this. It's my 8th time fielding phone calls from employees that no longer have positions guaranteed in this district, of hearing their stories and feeling their pain and seeing the upset faces on those students that they service every day, and the families that have become friends and colleagues of theirs. So we feel your pain. I understand how difficult this is. Hard choices must be made, and we are doing our very best to work with the district and find a compromise that is guarantees a certainty that we don't have right now. Last year we faced the same issue. The board asked us to take 10 furlough days, and we bargained contingency language that we felt was a very progressive way to address the issue.
30 seconds.
And as we came forward, all of our layoffs were rescinded. Almost all of the temp positions were rehired, and we had a situation where furlough days weren't impacted on the people who are actually working on a day-to-day basis. So we felt like it was a good solution. We're working towards a solution again, and we know we'll come up with something as quickly as the timelines allow us to. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And then a quick question for Mr. Hernandez. I just want to say that you've stated that this is about David Archer as a temporary teacher. This item is on the probationary and permanent teachers. If you're talking about David Archer, then you should speak under D7, which we're going to talk about at the end of the meeting, if you can hold off, because otherwise it's not directly related to probationary and permanent teachers. I don't know that that relates to it. Yeah, all temporary teachers are noticed, so yeah.
It's not part of the resolution.
It's just not part of this resolution. But you can absolutely speak to him on D7, and I hope that you'll wait and do that. Okay, so that's for later. This is for budget.
I did ask when I pulled D7 and 8 that they be talked to in conjunction with E1. I got my answers to E1. I'm perfectly willing now to vote on D7 and D9.
Okay, going to do that now?
I don't like the answer, but I don't think anything I can do about it.
So I think we do have a public
All
comment.
right, if we're going
so-
to do D7 at the same time that we do E1, we'll go ahead and take Hvac Hernandez.
So, thank you very much again for listening to us. This is what I love about democracy. Anybody can say their piece and sing. I want to speak, and I think Ike will be happy to speak to advocate for David, how important he is to the community at OAS, and how we think it would be a really hard person to replace. It's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade class combined. It's not an easy class to teach. Believe me, I teach in that class as theater. But it's a very rewarding job, and David has been doing a great job as a temp, unfortunately, for 5 years. And every year he gets hired again as a temp because whatever political reasons there are, but we don't consider him a temp. We consider him a full-time teacher. And so my comment is to consider, I know he's not on that list, but given the circumstances, not just of the school, but the class itself, and how hard it's going to be to find another teacher that wants to teach there and that wants to take the challenge of doing a 3rd grade course and doing effectively. And here's Kike to speak about that.
David is the best teacher ever, pretty much. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Except that nobody else could teach our class that effectively.
We get one of the things about our school is that we welcome a lot of different kids, not just racially or culturally, but also different kids. I mean, and we treat them all differently as a whole child, and everybody gets the opportunity to learn. Everybody is included. It's really beautiful to see kids that would be excluded in another schools, like if it had been in my school when I went to school. And that's the one thing that I appreciate about OAS. And I think it would be very difficult for you to find a replacement for David.
Board, any other comments, feedback, or questions? Do I have a motion?
I will move to approve the reduction in particular kinds of services and adopt resolution number 2011/12-38.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 4-0, 1 absent. And do we want to vote on D7 and 9 as well?
May as well.
Somebody makes a motion.
I'll move to approve the notice of release to temporary teachers effective the end of the 2011/12 school year. And I'll also move to approve the recommended personnel action items dated February 28th, 2012.
Second.
Discussion?
The reason I pulled those is David Archer's name is on both of them. And as I said earlier, I don't know him, but since the day I campaigned and went to their school, there have been issues that have affected that school constantly for the whole 3 years. And to take somebody vital out of that position who's so dedicated to school, along with the other things they're going through, just is one more nail that it's hard for me to accept. And there's no, in the spirit of fairness to all the other teachers, there's no way that the system can prevent something like that, but it's one of the reasons I don't like the system. Thank you.
Ms. Cordero?
Yeah, I think we're creating a difficult situation here in attempting to, I appreciate your concerns, Ms. Sharon, but I think it would be more effective to bring forth a request or a proposal to make the position permanent rather than to simply ignore the structures and procedures that we have in place that we apply to all temporary teachers. If there's a need for that position to be permanent, we should be discussing that as a board. Because I really think it would be very bad precedent and if we did this, we could go back and look through all kinds of people here to decide, who the students really like, who the parents really like, who the school really needs. And, as I've said many times, we've cut so far that everything we're cutting now is necessary. We could make a case for every single teacher. But if the school needs that position, then it should come forward as a request to make the position permanent so that it wouldn't be included in this list.
Ms. Parker?
Although, of course, they would then have very low seniority and they would be included in the other list. But I do appreciate that, Mrs. Cordero, because there are many fantastic temporary teachers on this list and teachers that I know that certain departments and certain schools feel are really critical to their programs, and I'm sorry about all of them.
Any further discussion?
Just that, we have simply, I won't say the word, OAS we have caused a lot of situations with that school that have affected their ability to operate. And I just have to carve out those things that are a little bit different than all the other schools. It's a different school. Pure and simple, it's a different school. So it's hard for me to vote for this, but I will.
All right, and I think you've all shared how I'm feeling. I think that we're losing a lot of teachers. I have faith that this is not the end of this conversation, that we'll continue negotiations in positive spirit to make sure that we can do what we can to keep really great teachers in our schools. So we have a motion. Did we get a second?
Yeah.
All right, so then we'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0, 1 absent.
Thank you.
All right, and moving on to E2. Ms. Peak, we have you introducing the item as well.
So at our last board meeting, we had the first reading of the Sunshine proposal to negotiate with the Santa Barbara Teachers Association for the implementation of the 12-13 school year. And we presented that on February 14th, and this is pursuant to the way that certificated bargaining goes. This is the second reading of the proposal that we would like to negotiate with the teachers union regarding reopening of salary, employee benefits, and 2 other items, in this case, hours and conditions and class size.
Board, any questions, comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the Santa Barbara Unified School District Sunshine proposal to negotiate with Santa Barbara Teachers Association for implementation in the 2012-13 school year.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries 4-0, 1 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peak. Now we're moving on to our conference agenda, and we have Ms. Chate or Dr. Cash leading the discussion on 2012-2013 budget reduction.
Totally depressed after going through the previous 2 items. But here we go. Once again, we're making some cuts to our education. In January 2012, the governor released his 2012-13 proposed budget and its plan to solve the $9.2 billion budget problem. The cornerstone of the governor's budget in 2012-13 is the assumptions that the voters will approve a temporary increase in incomes and sales tax through the initiative that the governor has proposed for the November 2012 ballot. In the event that the taxes are not extended by the the voters, the district would be facing another mid-year trigger of $370 per student, which is equal to the loss of revenue approximately $4.9 million. And in the reduction of this, and a reduction of our structural deficit over the next 3 years of $883 a year. I'm sorry, 883,000. Our assumptions, our planned assumptions are listed in the packet. I'm not going to go through all of those unless you care for me to do that. Cash management, I just want to touch on that briefly. We're very concerned about the cash as far as at the end of this school
Excuse me?
year.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Ms. Chate, I just had a question about one of the assumptions. Is that, should I ask you
Absolutely.
now or should I?
Sure.
Just where it says additionally, it's the very last line, the underlined line of the second to the last bullet.
Mm-hmm.
And it says additionally, the effects of all layoffs must be negotiated. The effects of the layoffs meaning whether the position is eliminated completely or whether.
Actually, that should be the furloughs are negotiated. The layoffs are as they are.
Okay.
But there may be,
There could be effects as a result of the layoffs that must be negotiated. For example, increasing in class sizes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
excuse me. Getting back to the cash management, we are concerned and we are watching our cash flow extremely close because, as you know, the state has deferred 38.4% of our revenue out to future years, or out to the future year. And that can go all the way out till February of next year, 2013, money that is due to us today. Sorry. So Conrad and I are watching our cash very, very closely. We discussed last week, last board meeting, the mid-year cuts. As you all know, we took a hit of about $658,000. So here we have given you a list of the reductions that we're proposing, and I'll briefly go through them, and then we will put up our menu of reductions, and then you can play around with them as which ones you choose. A reduction of classified personnel. The reduction of 16 classified staff is a combination of retirement, probation, resignations not to be filled. This is really not a reduction in positions as it is if they resign, retire, or if they're probationary and they don't pass probationary status, we will not fill those positions. B, that should be a savings about $620,000. The spring semester section reduction. This reduction is comprehensive high school sections by 6 due to fewer students in the second half of the school year. This is something that we should be doing every year, and so they're reducing it this year, or for next year. That's $108,000. We're going to continue to transfer 30% of our Tier 3 categoricals to the unrestricted general fund. And what we would like to do is increase it by another additional 20% for a total of 50% reduction in Tier 3. That's about a $1.1 million increase. The district reorganization. The district office will be reorganized to reduce the costs through shift of expenses and elimination or reduction in the use of consultants. This basically will put more on the staff to do more instead of hiring consultants. E is eliminate the use of the contracted Maxim nurses. That's $65,000 savings. Increase 9th grade English size, class size reduction from 25 to either 30, or this is a typo, 32. Sorry about that. This would be a negotiated item. Oh, increase of 9th grade English classes to 35 to 1. Sorry, that is not a typo. It is 35 to 1. I'm sorry. That would be a savings of $274,000. Increase class size reduction in K3 from 25 to either 30 to 1 or 32 to 1. This could possibly be a $1.3 million savings. Implement 9 furlough days for certificated, classified, administrative, and confidential employees. This would be $4.2 million. Reduction in certificated staff, a reduction of certificated staff which you just approved, and that's $4.6 million. So Connor, do you want, here we go. You need the Excel spreadsheet. So here we have the Excel spreadsheet, which has all the reductions or the savings listed here. So we haven't negotiated the 9 furlough days. You just reduced the certificated personnel. Those kind of go hand in hand. But all the others are open for discussion.
Board, we do have public comment, so I think we'll take public comment before our discussion.
All right, Carol Leaf.
Okay, Carol Leaf again. As I'm listening to all this, it sort of strikes me as if we're sort of not arguing, figuratively, arguing over dessert when we're about to be homeless. I've heard several people speculate as to what the situation will be next year or the year after that. It's going to be worse. It is going to be worse every year for the rest of the time you sit on this board. And probably, I mean, until something really dramatic happens. There's a Stanford pension report that came out, and our county is almost $3 billion in unfunded pensions. The state is almost $550 billion, up to that in some estimates. What this means is that all of the budgets of all of these agencies are going to be continuously cut. In the city of Vallejo, which is 40 miles outside of San Francisco, there is 1 fireman and there's 1 policeman, and it's not a small city. The city of Stockton is going bankrupt. Again, the structural problems are so massive that, I mean, there's hope in every situation. And I mean, I'm not a doom gloom person. I'm optimistic, and I have unfailing faith in the human spirit and ability to overcome problems. That said, this is a very serious, I study macroeconomies, this is a very serious problem, and this is a time when I think all of us, particularly those of you in positions of leadership, would behoove all of us to read and study on the structural system of the state. I mean, I've read a number of books. I just bought this one the other day. It's called California Crack-Up. It tells you how all this money is allocated. It's a time where rhetoric and these sorts of things aren't going to work for us anymore. We've got to understand how these budgets work, because they're going to affect all of us. You know, I mean, one question I was going to ask is, probably you can't do this. I mean, can the community members volunteer to teach these classes that are going to be overcrowded, or I mean, is that possible? It's probably not in the bylaws of the Board of Education. I would do something like that. I'm sure there are lots of people, friends of mine, who would love to do that, something like that to help. You know, the governor's report, I mean, it is, I'd say it's rather more sanguine than I would present it. This is a completely sugar-coated budget. And people like yourselves, who are respected within the community, got to go to, you're at these public meetings, but got to get involved in the other public meetings where you can air, you know, become educated on these structural problems and air these things out to the other elected officials that we have. We need people like you and like me and educated people who can speak to these problems and get some attention paid to them. We're not going to get anybody educated. So, you know, it's a little more work. And I spend most of my time researching these things because I'm lucky enough to
30 seconds.
Have been afforded this position. But it is just something that really it's time. Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Board comments, questions? Ms. Cordero?
I had a question regarding the contracted Maxim nurses. What are the services that they currently provide? And if we eliminated them, what would happen to those services?
They provide the services of a nurse. The goal would be to hire the lead nurse, which is a position we've had vacant for a period of time.
So does this 65,000 that we say would be a savings include the cost of hiring the lead nurse?
The cost of hiring the lead nurse is currently in the budget. We just haven't filled the position.
Ah, okay. Thanks.
On that same question, didn't we terminate Maxim nurses last year in the process? We hired them back?
We could not get a lead nurse. So we needed to provide nursing services pursuant to, pursuant most likely to special needs students with IEPs.
So we did terminate it, but then...
Yes.
Ms. Cordero, I think she's...
I also had a question regarding A, the reduction of classified staff. Oh, I'm sorry, you answered that question for me. G, and I apologize if I'm just not following the math, but
I have something that may explain that, because this is complicated.
okay, because what I was looking at, I assumed that the 566, 441 represents the savings at 30 to 1.
From 25 to 30 to 1.
Yes. Then going up to 32, it more than doubled, or about doubled, the savings, and I didn't
But that's from going
understand
from
that.
30,
Okay.
30, 25 to 32. But I do have a spreadsheet to show you how this all works. Now this is kind of complicated. So as you remember that we got the CSR K3 flexibility. We usually get $1,071 per child when we were funded, when we had 20.44 to 1. Okay? So at the top, you'll see 20 to 1. Funding per student is $1,071. Total funding for that those 20 kids is $21,000. Student to teacher ratio, I didn't correct my, sorry, I didn't correct my typo, sorry. Okay, so student to teacher ratio flexibility, 25 to 1 where we are currently. We got hit with a 70% funding, so 70% penalty on our funding. So instead of $1,000, we're now getting $750. But that is only on 20 kids, not 25. Yes. So you can see that the calculation gets, so when you get to 30 to 1, you're still only getting funding for 25 kids. And it goes down to 32. You only get $15,000 for 20 kids. Because you're down to 70%. So how this works, and this is this is a very small bit of my whole calculation. So if you had, currently at 106 teachers, if we go to 30 to 1, we need 96 classes. So the savings of that is $867,000. However, the penalties are $300,000. So your ending savings is $566,000. If you go from 25 to 32, you have 86 teachers, which is a 20 teachers at $1.7 million, but you have a $383,000 penalty, which is a $1.3 million.
Creative California finance.
At its best.
Yeah. But if you'll recall, class size, it used to be, 20.44 or nothing. And the penalty provisions were brought in during the initial rounds of flexibility for a class size reduction.
Ms. Cordero, any more comments?
No, thank you.
Ms. Parker?
Got a number of comments and questions. First of all, this is the first time we're seeing this. Are we going to be voting on this at our next meeting, the March 13th meeting, or is this going to be coming back to us in April?
It'll be coming back in whole and in bits for your consideration.
So when do you expect us to, when do you want us to take action on this?
The whole matter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll have to take action before
March 13th.
before the second interim.
Because the
So-
county wants to know what you're going to do about this $5.8 million problem.
So we'll be running through the Excel spreadsheet at our next meeting.
When is our next meeting?
March 13th.
Oh, okay.
First question, B, spring semester section reductions. Right now, it's contractual that once there's X number of days at the beginning of the school year, and then it becomes a full year assignment. So is this B something that needs to be negotiated as well?
No, there'll be semester to semester assignments.
There will be some semester to semester
Yes.
assignments, okay. Then on C, I just want to point out, I mean, it looks, this is the one continue to transfer 30%, but then add on an additional 20% on the tier 3. And it looks innocuous because it's just talking about something called tier 3. But these are people and programs that are particularly site decisions. I mean, obviously there are also district people and programs that are paid through this, but a lot of this is site categorical funding. And this is where site councils and staff, parents, and principals are going to be hit so hard. And I want our community to understand that. And I really feel like that this is something that principals should be talking about with their parents. That certain things that they really care about at their site will go away because of a poor decision on March 13th, possibly. Then in terms of the district office reorganization, before I could vote for that, I would really need to know exactly what that means. What does that reorganization look like? Who are the consultants that we wouldn't be hiring? What programs do they currently serve? How would they be served instead? So I think that needs to be out there.
That you will not see on March 13th because of personnel items. You'll see it sometime before you vote on a final budget in June.
Okay. On F, the increased 9th grade English class size reduction, to make that either to 30 to 1 or 35 to 1. All I would say about the 30 to 1 is that I don't want to increase class size. I know that 25 to 1 is hard on a master schedule, and I don't know how you go to 30 to 1 with the ripple effect that has on the master schedule when you're trying to figure out those 5 kids and how they then roll into their world history class, which is a 35 to 1. And then how they roll, or, not world history, being freshmen, but into their health class, let's put it that way. Whatever classes that they have, it's really hard to parse that out. And then finally, for me on the G, increased class size in grades K3 from 25 to 1 to 30 or 32 to 1. Again, I feel like it was a huge loss to our district to lose 20 to 1. And I don't want to go up to the same class size as there is in the upper grades. I think that is a real loss to the community. It's a real loss to our students. Trying again to parse that out so that it's somewhere between 25 and 32, huge issue, because how do you roll a class up without doing combination classes all over the place if you put 27 kids in, or 28, and then in 4th grade they go to 32. So that's just a problem. So that's it for me.
Mr. Herron?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit more to the number C. And I agree with Mrs. Parker totally. It looks so nice up there, $1 million, 20%. There's no face on it. Hey, let's just vote for it. I remember the last time we did that, the next meeting we had mothers, unwed mothers with babies in baby carts descend on us because we wiped out their program. I want to know, to the best degree possible, who's being affected by that 1 million. Is that 20% just cut and dried across the board, or do we look at program and say, hey, we can take 80, we can eliminate this program because we need more money over here? Who makes those kind of decisions? Are we taking 20%? Are we saying we want $1 million and schools, you figure out where it is? Or do we allocate certain dollars to every school?
That's basically what we do. First, we get a dollar amount of how much money in every bucket we're going to get. Then we take 30% right off the top. Then we usually allow it to the district, the sites, and they decide what they want to do with the money. And that's when they go out and they hire teachers, temporary teachers, to fill or buy down a class, or tutors.
Do we have any role in that? I'm not we, but does administration have any role that says, hey, you've got money, but you're not using it to the best degree possible, and we have a school over here who really needs it? Do we make those kind of decisions?
No, we don't. We base it all on ADA. It's all done on ADA.
So a school can do a program that isn't, quote, not nearly as important as one at another school, but it gets wiped out, and the one that's not important gets stayed in?
Well, I'm not sure that any of them are not important.
Well, you always you have to make decisions on something. I just wondered.
Well, the way it works, I mean, the way this district has traditionally done it is taken the Tier 3 money, take 30% off, so the schools don't even see that.
We've done that.
Right.
Yeah.
So this idea to save money would be to take 50% off of the dollars and give distribute the other 50%. And that money is because it's flexible, it can be used in a whole host of ways as opposed to the way it used to be in a restricted manner.
Well, I would urge, as Mrs. Parker did, that the schools at least sort of let us know, what programs are going to be cut, and if there's any that are so vital that we need to do something different. It talks about Tier 3. Didn't we get some flexibility in Tier 2 along the way, or we're more moved into Tier 3? No?
No.
Okay.
There are certain funding sources that are in Tier 3, like the school improvement and pupil retention block grant. And the flexibility that Dr. Cash spoke about is that you can really use them for many different ways of,
That's right. There were
supporting
more
schools.
things in Tier 3 that were allowed
Yes.
to be. That's right. That's where it was. Yeah. Okay. I'll just use my little graphic here. Up until this year, we've cut 20.5 million. And this 600,000 last year is sort of not really all the truth. It should be 6.3 million. We were fortunate enough to have the foresight to unify. We picked up $6 million. If we hadn't done that, that would be $6 million. And I said at the time, it's a shame that $6 million we couldn't do anything new with it. We had to use it just for the deficit. But this should be 26 million, and now we're going up to 32 million. I mean, that's dramatic. And I just hope the public understands it. I hope, I'll just say, I hope H comes into play very, very heavily. I know that it's a sacrifice on our teachers to have furlough days and certificated people and the entire staff. And well, not really, not really. I say that it's an economic cost, and it might be an economic cost to parents, but the teachers are the ones who will make that decision to a great degree. And I would just hope that in their hearts they would look at the other 70 teachers that are going to be let go and really have an economic problem. I'm going to urge and urge and urge that we go furloughs with the total understanding that I just hope that the staffs can, I know they haven't had increases for 5 years or thereabouts, which is really hard, and their costs have gone up. But this is just one more thing that if furlough days we can always correct if we don't need them if the governor passes his proposals. Once we have layoffs, it's awful hard in elementary schools particularly to bring teachers back on mid-year. So if we had furloughs and we don't need them, just like last year, it works beautifully for everybody. If we have these 70 layoffs that we have to maintain, it's hard to bring them back once school starts. So I would urge negotiations to take place as fast as possible with an emphasis on the furlough day option. Thank you.
Ms. Cordero.
Our target is 5.8, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what you've identified is 11.5,
Yes.
almost 11.6.
And it's a little deceiving because you're really kind of double counting. You either, combination of furloughs and layoffs or furloughs or layoffs. You can't really you can't take both. I would think that you wouldn't want to do both of them.
Okay, so, and the increase in class size for K3 is not included in that 11.6?
That's correct, because I didn't know which one you would go for. So whatever number you decide, we'll put that dollar amount up in there.
Okay.
And what I'm hearing is that you'd like to see 26 to 1, 27 to 1, 28 to 1, 29 to 1, and 31 to 1. Does that sound right? No, I mean that's I would imagine would be helpful.
I would like to see nothing over 30 to 1.
Okay.
I would prefer to take both of these off the table, F and G, but if my colleagues feel otherwise, I would like to see it in increments of 1.
Ms. Parker?
Well, I'll just say what I said before, which is yes, we can look at increments of 1, but then there's a ripple effect for the upper grades that becomes incredibly difficult.
That's correct.
So, Mr. Tay, which would be the ones that would not occur, that we could not include or that we would not include if we initiated the furloughs?
If you chose the $4.2 million for 9 furloughs, then we would be 1.6 million short.
Right, but what I'm saying is, which of those what would we take off the list if we agreed with H? Because you said we wouldn't do the furloughs and other things. You said there was a double counting in there.
Right.
So which would be the ones that would not?
Well, I can tell you that I would not bring forward the significant increase in class sizes.
Okay.
Those two things are fairly equal.
Okay, so it would be the class size reductions, basically, that would not happen. We probably would not do if we did the furloughs.
That would be certainly
Okay.
considered.
Is there anything else up there that you would say we would not do if we did the furloughs?
I want to point out that I is 70 FTEs, and that is inclusive of class size reduction. So if you did choose I,
it would necessitate also choosing G, essentially.
Exactly.
So it's not It's not really a separate number.
It's not a separate number.
Okay, so I and G are combined, and so we wouldn't do either of those if we did, we probably wouldn't do either of them if we did H to its full amount.
I would think that that would be reduced.
Okay.
Ms. Parker?
And I'll just point out that both furloughs and class size reduction are negotiated, so I don't know how we say, well, we're gonna go for H and not for G when it's all part of negotiations.
Correct,
So-
and essentially you have tonight already approved I, G, and F through the layoff process.
Okay. One other quick question I have, Ms. Jete, is what about the PARS retirement incentive? Is there an estimated number that we can put on that to put up there?
I have no numbers at this time. We had a lot of people here the other day. We have 2 more workshops.
The period closes March 23rd.
What is the smallest number for it to even fly? Was it 50 students?
50 teachers.
If 50,
39 classified.
okay. So if it were just bare minimum to fly, will that save the district any money?
That would have to be,
We'll do a position by position analysis, but yes, it will save money.
I just wish that there were some way that we could put an estimate up there that it would fly bare minimum so that that would take something else off the table, because that's the reason why we're doing it. So if we could possibly, I guess what I'm asking for is contingency language on our part, so that we can put that in there, and if it happens, we'll do the retirement incentive and we'll take this off the table, if you see what I'm saying. So if there's anything that we can do, and also I would appreciate when it comes back on the 13th, if there's just contingency language in general in terms of if the governor's, or if there is a education funding measure that passes in November.
Well, that would be something that we would be negotiate with the SBTA and would not be appropriate to have in a public board meeting.
Well, I mean, for some of it, but for others that are not negotiable, things
Correct.
like, transferring the tier 3 funding, that's something that we could be
Yeah, yes,
talking
absolutely.
about.
Well, any of those that you do pick will have an effect on H and I.
Mhm. Yep, okay.
All right. Last year, for item C, which is the tier 3 funding, there were some items that came to us. We actually had a little bit more information that said X, Y, and Z was going to be excluded from some of this. And like some of my colleagues have said tonight, I think it would be important to get an idea of what tier 3 might be. If we can't guesstimate what that would be, then maybe looking at what we did cut. Well, we didn't cut this year, as we would have, because my concern is that 50% is a lot, and tier 3 also goes to some of our most neediest student population. So I'm hesitant to just consider 1.125 cut. However, in my quick, simple math, I said earlier, and I will repeat, I have faith that the negotiations will be approached in a positive spirit. But since that is out of our control, we almost have to vote for everything on there to add up to 5.5 because the H and I are negotiated. So
Not I.
well, not I anymore. Well, there you have it.
But I will be subject to negotiations depending on what happens with everything else that we're discussing, because it is all related,
So right now, those things that are within our control, it seems that every single one of these options would need to seriously be considered in order to meet our 5.8. But I do have concerns over item C, which is the tier 3 funding. I think 50% is a huge cut. I also agree with the class size discussion. Personally, G, which is K3, is they're both hard, but significantly hard on me, or for me. But I think that our kindergarten through third grade students, to ask them to be in a classroom where they're learning the basics and creating a foundation that we hope will take them through the rest of their years here is a different type of consideration for me than high school. And that's not to say that ninth grade English isn't core, because it is, and it's extremely important, but item G is one that I personally have a very hard time with, yet it's potentially a considerable savings. Item D, which is the district office reorganization, I know it's needed, and I know so often we hear, let's cut administration. I want to remind everybody that we are already very low staffed. I keep going and talking to colleagues across the state, and they can't believe how small our staff, our administration staff is compared to our district size. I'm not advocating that one is more important than the other, but I do think we have to note that cutting the administrative side also means it will have an impact on our schools. In order to do a lot of the things we do, the money comes here, it gets dispersed, bills are paid, there's offices and departments that respond to the need of students, and as it is, I hear regularly that it's already hard on both ends. I hear the administration saying we're doing our best to keep up, and I hear school sites saying all the time it's just not enough. No matter how hard you're working, it's not enough. We want more, we want less. So I think that I don't want to sugarcoat that by saying that a district office reorg really won't have an impact on the students, because I think it will. But I understand why it's up there, because everyone is going to take a hit no matter what. So those are my comments about all. I think, yet again, we're in a situation where they're probably all bad ideas, but we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice, and again, I think that our November election will be important. The outcome of that will impact our schools and our students in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. So, Ms. Parker.
I just have one quick follow-up on the K-3 class size reduction piece. We were talking about looking at it, sort of adding one student at a time. Can we also, just as part of the conversation, talk about it at grade level? I assume that it'll be, that each grade level is approximately 25% of the total cost for K-3. So if we can look at it and say, maybe if we have to do it, we only do it for third grade. If we have to do it, we only do it for second and third, that kind of thing. So I hope that that can be part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Herron.
On I, that 4.6 million, does that include the 1,351,000 for G maximum? The class G.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be better to put the 1.351 under G and reduce I?
I didn't know which one you'd pick. If
Well-
you picked the 30 to 1 or the 32
Well,
to 1.
put them, historically, we've always chosen the largest in previous situations. But wouldn't it be better to focus the dollar amount separately than as that lump sum? The lump sum is sort of misleading. I'd rather see whatever 4620 minus 1351 is and have the 1351 there, because that makes I maybe easier.
We can do that right now if you'd like.
While you're doing that, can I ask you a question about I and G as well? You said we basically have already done I tonight, and I'm assuming you're referring to E1.
Yes, I said that.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Dr. Cash.
That's G and I now. We've
And and so E1 listed, I thought these were representative of individuals. So where it says elementary 22, that's 22 individuals, is that correct?
22 FTEs.
Or 22 FTE. Okay, because I've added this up 3 times and it comes out to 60.
Correct.
So where's the 10 that's up there, the additional 10 that's up there?
That includes some of the temporary teachers.
Ah, okay, okay.
If none of the teachers that are listed tonight as temporary or the positions listed as probationary, the number would be significantly, if none of them came back, would be significantly higher than the 70 that's listed there.
Any other comments or questions? No? All right.
What does, just you can delete all this afterward. If you go in the target reduction and put the numbers A, B, C, D, and E and F, put those into the target reduction. And put the I in target reductions. I took it out. So does that come, what is that total? Is that the?
5.9 million.
That gives us a little extra.
So theoretically, we could do away with G totally.
And that's
when our F's in
only,
there. Well, you could actually do away with F too.
that's only if we get our 16 classified resignations
Okay,
in letter A.
because as I understand it, we're going to be faced with this decision in the next meeting.
Absolutely.
And as I understand it, that H may not be negotiated by then.
Parts of the decision you're not going to be able to make by the next meeting because you made one tonight by reducing the force, the teachers. And unless there is a tentative agreement to be brought forward in relationship to the contracts, that will be part of the second interim, that there will be 70 fewer FTEs.
Okay. Okay, that was a good exercise. You can, I just looked like we could do it without class size reduction.
Any additional comments before we move on from our sad conversation? All right, and with that, we will move on to F2. And is that Mr. Hvac?
Yes.
Okay, presentation or photovoltaic study at San Marcos High School.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm going to ask Anthony Palazzo from PMSM Architects and Carl Mayrose, our district project manager for the secondary district, to come up here and join me. The board has long talked about being green, going green, doing some green projects. As part of our anticipated Measure Q expenditures, we have photovoltaics as a placeholder under all of our secondary sites. The board authorized a study for San Marcos High School, a feasibility study, and that study is now complete. So I'd like to have Mr. Palazzo of PMSM Architects that did the study go through that study with you. The report is in your agenda, and a copy of the PowerPoint is in the agenda. I'll ask him to go through the PowerPoint. We'll try between the three of us to answer any questions you may have, and then we can talk about where you might want to go from here. That'll go forward, that'll go back.
Okay. All right, great. All right, members of the board, Dr. Cash, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. It's nice to talk about some possible money-saving concepts here as opposed to continually making cuts. I'll go ahead and just cut right into this. We're going to give a quick summary of the 30-plus page report that you've got in your packet this evening, and hopefully kind of keep it brief and keep it quick so that we can get to questions as soon as possible. Here's kind of some of the discussion items. We're going to talk a quick system summary. You're looking at about a 395 kilowatt, almost 1,600 panels to be installed on the site. We looked at two different options, one being a roof mount option and one being a canopy mount option. We looked at a couple different layouts for each of those options, and then we're going to talk about what your costs, rebates, and savings are. So, system summary. We've got a 395 kilowatt system. What that's going to be producing is roughly 55% of the energy on site. It would reduce your CO2 emissions by almost 13,000 tons or 25 million automobile miles, and that payback is 15 to 17 years. The reason we go to that 55% is that's kind of the sweet spot to where the payback is at that 15 to 17 year mark. If we start to get a larger system, in other words 65, 70%, your payback doesn't really change in terms of 15 to 17 years. What happens is your cost goes up and your savings go up, but they kind of move directly proportionally. Also, you don't have more than about 1,600 panels worth of space on your site that really work well for installations based on the study. So that number kind of works real well. It also doesn't have you overproducing on the site, which can also have other problems with your annualized bill and things like that. So this is really what from our analysis was kind of the sweet spot of where this could be. It's going to be projected to save almost $4 million in savings over 25 years in the life of the system. Your year one savings would be $75,000 in estimated electric bill reduction and a $92,000 potential rebate. So in year one, we're looking at a total of almost $170,000 in savings. Anytime we install one of these projects on the site, it has a great potential for student involvement. So some of you were at the Hope School District opening, and the students are excited about having that on their campuses. The other thing is we are, at the end of this, we'll be suggesting a roof-mounted type system because of the type of construction you have. It's going to have a minimal visual impact on your site because of the very low sloping roofs that you have on the classroom buildings. We actually took some pictures out there, and you barely see the roofs from across the street just because of the nature of those. So it's going to have a very low visual impact, if you will. Roof mounting, pros and cons. I'll just kind of hit on these real quickly. It's an efficient use of existing school property. There's minimal public access, if you will, up there in terms of not being on the ground or on something that students can easily get to. They help to protect your roof surface and reduce some of the heat being transmitted into it. And you have to re-roof regularly anyway, so that as part of this putting it on the roof, we would be re-roofing it. And so that's, in lieu of constructing parking canopies is kind of the two options we looked at. And we don't have to go to the California Geologic Survey, which we're in earthquake country here, and that can be somewhat of a problem. So because they're existing buildings, we're not adding any additional structures on the site. We do have to go to DSA. We do have to justify the existing structures. There's typically a little longer review time with working with these types of structures in existing. And you may have to do some remedial roof work, excuse me. Say that 10 times fast. You open things up, there's a little bit of rot here, there's a little bit, there. We do account for that in our costs in terms of putting some allowances in, but those are some of the pros and cons. Canopies can create usable space in terms of parking or shade structures. We typically are building those outside of the school grounds, or they'll be in isolated areas, so interruption to the school site is minimal. They're usually up 13, 14 feet, and they're not easy to climb up to. In some cases, depending on the type of carport you use, they can be more cost effective. You do still have to go through DSA. You do have to do the additional review with the California Geologic Survey, like any new structure on a campus. and you're building another structure on your campus that requires maintenance. So just kind of the things we were looking at as we were making assessments of each of these. In terms of the potential roof layout at San Marcos, we looked at the main classroom wings and then at the additional wing that's currently going up there. The south side of those buildings would be covered. I want you to notice that there are some little walkways in between each of these little 24 panel arrays. That's for the fire department access. We are required to have access up on that roof so that the fire department can get in and around the roof. We've talked to them about this. They were in concept at this point. They're in agreement with the layout we're proposing. So they can get up there and do the work they need to in the case of an emergency. We looked at doing on the shop building as well, again, maintaining those same accesses all around. And the nice thing about this is the structure of these buildings is a block structure. Therefore, it's a very heavy structure. The weight that we'd be adding to these structures by adding these panels in is less than what is projected to be less than 10% of the entire weight of the building, therefore not requiring a full upgrade of the building itself. We're also going to be taking off some gravel roofs, which helps reduce the weight as a whole, so that our justification structurally is a lot easier at DSA. That's what all that means. If these were wood frame structures or if they were a light metal frame structure, it'd be a little more difficult because those are lighter structures and we might require full seismic upgrade of those structures. So this campus lends itself to a roof mount system very well. Okay, a canopy mount, we looked at that, and actually we in this layout we were a little short on the panels of the 1600, but we would definitely try to work to get these a little bigger and get it out there. We're kind of working with Google Maps, which isn't the most precise, but generally we'd kind of have a lot of chopped up arrays just because of the nature of that parking lot and how that's laid out. It's not necessarily as desirable to have them as chopped up as it would be if we had a nice big open field, if we could say cover the entire tennis court area. That actually just doesn't work for the educational purposes and the physical education purposes over a tennis court. But anyway, we do need to maintain some access in and around from a drive aisle standpoint for the fire trucks to be able to get in and out of there. And so this, we'd come up with some sort of a scheme that looked like this for canopies out in the parking lots, if you will. We thought we'd show you a couple sample installations. As you can see here, this is a roof-mounted system. We're proposing to go to a metal roofing, standing seam metal roofing system, and if you notice, this racking system clips right into the metal ribs. So there's not a lot of additional cost in terms of installing a roof mount, a metal roof that's capable of handling one of these types of systems, and very versatile in terms of clipping the panel system right onto the roofs, the roof ribs, if you will. This is the canopies that you saw out at the Monte Vista School and at the Hope School. For those of you that may have visited those, again, they can be usable space that can cover the cars, help reduce some of the heat island effect, as well as produce some shade for the students for lunch eating areas. So just to give you a sense of that. Here's a little more detailed look at the cost savings as a whole. You notice that the cost savings start out in year one at roughly $75,000 a year, and they increase over the 25 years to $200,000 a year. The main component of that is an average of 5% increase of utility rates over that period of time. That's what the typical average we use for calculating this is. Obviously, some years it's more, some years it's less, but historically, that's what we project. And then again, in year one, we'd be saving $75,000 in electric bill reduction, $92,000 in the potential rebate. Keep in mind that rebate, and we'll see in a future slide, is roughly $461,000 for the first 5 years of operation of the system. That's how the rebates currently are being funded. So this $92,000 after year 5 would drop off, but in year 5, your total savings would projected to go up proportionately based on the way the utility rates are going up. So we looked at, there's some more detailed cost analysis in the report, but here's kind of a summary of what that works out to be. The costs attributed to the solar panel and equipment of the solar panel system are roughly $3.15 million. Portion of the project attributed to the roofing component of the project is roughly just under 2.5 million for a total of just under 5.6 million. Your projected savings over the 25 years for energy use is 3.6 million, and then again that 461,000 CSI SCE rebate in years 1 to 5 would total, projected to total about $461,000. So again, kind of looking at the magic number of just over $4 million in total savings over the course of 25 years, and then looking at the total savings over 25 years of your initial investment of the photovoltaic panels installation and the equipment with that, including some maintenance and replacement of that, the savings number, I should say, does include an allowance for replacement of some of the components that do typically tend to need to be replaced after 10 and 15 years, excuse me. So just over $900,000 total savings over the course of a 25-year period over the initial investment of the solar panels themselves. Okay, and then looking at the canopy component of it, again, the portion attributed to the savings roughly works out to be the same, just at about $915,000. But again, the cost, the projected cost for the canopy systems is slightly less at $2.2 million. But again, you still have the problem of needing to re-roof your roofs. So that's why while this is slightly less, the total project cost of this canopy scenario is slightly less than the roofing component. You still have the cost of roofing needed to be done on that site because those roofs are they're nearing the end of their usable life, if you will. Okay, and again, these estimates to kind of put the quote-unquote disclaimer under there are based on what the SCE rebates are currently running at about 15 cents a kilowatt. That's a year ago at this time, there was 0 rebates. 2 years ago at this time, those rebates were at 30 cents. 3 years ago, they were almost 45 cents. So those rebates do tend to fluctuate, and we don't know where they're going to be, you know, within the next 12 months per se. They seem to be holding actually fairly steady right now, based on what I'm hearing from the folks in the industry. So we're hoping that those levels will stay, or that, you know, we'll kind of time it as they usually reset first of every year based on use or applications, I should say. Okay. You know, this year also, if you look at this winter, production's been way up. At Hope, we've been seeing almost 20% higher than we projected. It's not normal. We're having, unfortunately, great weather, unfortunately for us skiers. So it's, you know, we're seeing a little higher production this year. We may see lower production in other years. So again, these are kind of what we would normally see in terms of annual sun days and you know, versus rainy days, et cetera, in the Santa Barbara, or in this latitude area, I should say. Okay, that's really it. Here's a couple. I left you a couple resources for those of you that would like to do a little more research or have any you know, other questions about those programs in specific, and I can answer any questions that you have, or Mr. Hvac can.
Great, thank you.
Okay. If I could just make a couple comments. I'm excited about this project because we're spending capital money to save general fund money. So I know, you know, you may say, okay, you're doing all this work and you're only saving $1 million over 25 years. You can look at it that way. You can also look at, we're doing all this work, we're spending capital funds, and we're going to save $4 million in the magic word general fund money over the 25 years. So that's the win-win of this situation. We get to be green, we get to reduce our carbon footprint, we get spend capital funds to create savings to the general fund. I'm also excited because I'd rather spend money putting on new roofs than building carports when I'm going to have to, somewhere in the future, do those roofs anyway. A couple of things that would need to happen at this site, I'll let Carl talk briefly about, in that not all the electrical service is what it needs to be at the site, so we need to change some of the electrical service. The roofs would need to be re-roofed, and we'd have to do some HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning modifications before we could actually get the panels on. And so any questions you would have about that, we'd look at, but we'd have to kind of sequence these things, see how quickly we could get them done. But I'd like to come back with you right away, at least with a proposal to get PMSM Architects a proposal to you to start designing the photovoltaic part of this project as an architectural assignment at the next board meeting. If you decide that's the way you want to go, I think we can accomplish that in that time period to bring something back to you once you have your discussions on next steps. Carl, you want to say anything about the electrical system?
Three items that are on the Measure Q list are re-roofing, HVAC work, and what was the third one? The electrical infrastructure. I'm sorry, it's late, I'm tired. Right now, we've got what's called a 4160 volt system out there. It's aged, it's failing, it's unsafe. As some of you that have been around for a while know, we've had problems with that system, similar type of system at DP. So one of the things we want to do as part of this project is to reduce that system to a 480 volt system. As far as the roofs go, I've had a structural engineer take a look at several of the roofs that we have out there because we have had some leakage problems. We've got dry rot problems and termite problems. Anthony alluded to the fact that the roofs are nearing the end of their useful life, and the structural engineer has confirmed that there are issues out there that we need to address. Fortunately, the structural issues we anticipate are not going to be particularly expensive relevant to the whole project, and as Anthony mentioned, those are included in the work that he's proposing to do. The roofing system that we're going to put on, or we would like to put on, is what's called a standing seam metal roof. And if you look at the ticket window part of the stadium there, you'll see what it looks like in that portion of San Marcos right now. You can see in the top left-hand corner here what a standing seam metal roof looks like. That roof will last considerably longer than the types of roofs we have out there now, so we could be looking at anywhere from 25 to probably 40 years on that roof. So it's quite an improvement. In addition to that, we would also be increasing the insulation capacity to meet Title 24 standards, which would contribute to some of a little, not a lot, but it would contribute to some of the heat savings because we would keep the heat in the building in the winter and keep it a little bit cooler in the summertime. The third component is that Dave mentioned was the HVAC, again to cite Dr. Cash's alma mater at Dos Pueblos, where we have a very serious problem we're rectifying at this moment to get the heating working on those campuses and replace all the units out there. We have similar heating and ventilation units at San Marcos that are non-functional or are on the verge of failure. They're original equipment. They're well past their lifetime. So we've got rooms out there where the kids don't have heat in the wintertime. So that's another component to this that's on the Measure Q list that we would need to take care of prior to putting on the PV work for two reasons. One, it impacts the penetrations we have through the roofs. And secondly, there are old failing boilers in the mechanical rooms that are supposed to be used to heat the water to heat these buildings that don't work anymore. We need to take those out so that we can put in the inverters which translate that or convert that DC power to AC power for the campus. So I'm giving you kind of a simplified overview of the complexity of the work that we're doing out there. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that have to fit in a sequential order and go through DSA at the right times and work so that we don't disrupt the campus too much, but still get us to the end game of having the savings we're going to get from the photovoltaic. So everything that I mentioned here, from the roofing to the HVAC, all of the components are going to contribute to cost savings on that campus and creating a safer campus. So that's what we're looking at for the big picture.
Great. And I do want to re-emphasize something that Mr. Hvac said. It's the education world, which is that the funds that are being used for this are not funds that we can use to transfer to solve our problems with the general fund. But an initiative like this can help the general fund in the future. So I want to make that clear because I want our public to know that there is no magic to our budget situation. We can't use these funds to keep teachers. That's just not the way that the monies work. So with that, any comments, questions? Ms. Parker?
And I do appreciate the piece about how this is restricted, categorical. In this case, it's our bond funding that would be paying for our facilities bond for the roof solar panel installations. And how that then would turn around and free up money that otherwise would be going into our electric bills from the general fund. I do think it's disappointing that this ends up being about a $36,000 net savings if you're going to include capital and general fund together. So to me, the trade-off is really, you're going to be doing the roofing anyway. That's about $2.4 million. The extra amount is $3.1 million for the solar panel piece. Is that the highest and best use of the facilities funds? Is there any other project out there? Because we don't have enough facilities funds, so there's maintenance work, there's other things that won't happen because we go ahead with solar panels. Is that the highest and best use of the funds in order for us to get general fund savings, which ultimately will be $4 million, but it's hard. It's not as straightforward as I thought it would be, actually. And so that's just something that I want to think about. I get the piece about having the money come into the general fund instead, but I know that there will be disappointments and needs not met in terms of facilities at schools just to put the solar panel in.
Mr. Heron?
Yes, first, full disclosure, before I ran for school board, I was an advisor to the PMSM company, but I resigned that position almost the day I filed for the school board, so it's been 3+ years, so I have no connection to them now, but they are a great firm. How much money, Dave, Mr. Young, did we put into the calculations for the photovoltaic project for San Marcos?
$2 million was a placeholder that we put in for San Marcos, and I think we put in $2 million for other sites also. When we looked at the overall, we did not know where we were going to go. We thought San Marcos would be a good pilot project. We had no idea what this sort of thing would cost, and we just put a $2 million placeholder in there.
And do we have money in the bond calculations, second wave, for the roofing on San Marcos?
We have as categories, as we all know, that if we took all the projects that are on all the lists, we're oversubscribed. We'd always said that. It's going to come down to priorities.
Do we have the roofing at San Marcos as one of the items in the bucket list?
In the total bucket list, yes. The roofing and the electrical infrastructure and the HVAC. And we have photovoltaics there. When we were talking about what are we going to do with first phase sale, second phase sale, third phase sale, some of the things on that list, we don't really have a good estimate of what they're going to cost in the future. We're just trying to address the priorities first, and we're also working with school facility consultants to try and gain some matching funds for modernization. So we may have more money in the future.
Was the roofing at San Marcos in your process part of phase 2 high priority?
I think the roofing might be part of phase 1. I'd have to look, but any roofing that starts to fail is going to come up on the priority list.
I'm looking at the list here, and it's not one of the roof is not one of the on the recent list here.
Oh, that list is projects that are currently in progress.
And this one isn't?
This is not in progress. We've just done the study. In progress would be if we had an architectural assignment to start designing the system.
But you have photovoltaic project on the list.
Photovoltaic, the study.
So if you come back to us at the next meeting with a request to start the process, which is, I guess, the next stage above what is currently being done?
Correct.
Where would that money come from?
It would come from Measure Q bond funds.
And we still have some excess money in that?
We've not allocated all of the first sale. We have a contingency to give the board some flexibility.
We seem to be eating away at that contingency.
No, we are.
We are.
But it was sure.
We placed $2 million in, as Dave mentioned, as a placeholder for the photovoltaics in the first bond sale. But what I would propose to do is to take that $2 million that would be used for the photovoltaics, apply that toward the roofing, because that's the first thing that we need to do, and then take the money for the photovoltaics out of the next sale of bond funds. So it would be a little bit different structuring of how the bond funds were originally set up from the first list that we created.
Okay. If we weren't going to do this project, would you be making the same recommendation that we step in and do a roof immediately?
Well, yeah, I would, and for a couple of reasons. One is that the new B-wing roof is already going to have the metal seam roof on it, and the adjacent existing B-wing roof is the old style of roof. So we'd want to maintain that continuity across that, just for no other reason than for the visual effect from the street. But the other reason would be we want to get on these roofs before they start leaking and create more structural damage. So there is some priority to getting on these roofs. And we now, as a result of having had the structural engineer out there and done the investigations with our general contractor and the roofing company, we do see that there are more problems out there than we were aware of when we first set up the list a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
The metal roof is also lighter and will last longer, so it does take some weight off the roof.
Ms. Cordero?
Well, I really appreciate this presentation. It's giving me a lot to think about. I'm sort of along the lines with Ms. Parker about wanting to sort of think about it a little bit and compare it. I keep going back to previous bonds where we have gotten ourselves into trouble by, we ended up kind of funding whatever came up first. And then down the road, we didn't have enough to fund some of the other things that we thought might have actually been a higher priority, or at least as high a priority. So I don't want to run into that problem, but at the same time, it seems logical. I think Mr. Mayro's made a very compelling argument for replacing the roofs before they cause any additional structural damage. So I guess I'm going back to where I started, that it's given me a lot to consider and to think about, and I appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation, because it does help to have that information. But this is something that I want to know. For example, if we had the 2 million as a placeholder for photovoltaics, and then it goes up to 5 million, more than doubled, that if that's coming, if three of that is coming out of a future bond, I guess I'm optimistic that the future bond will pass, but it feels a little bit like counting our chickens before they hatch.
We're talking about the bonds have passed. We haven't sold all the bonds.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about this. Okay.
The next sale of the bonds.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the Measure V bond fund, we allocated, the district decision was already done before I came on board with the district, as a matter of fact, to allocate a certain dollar amount to every site. And then we worked down with those sites, got down towards the end, and we had some priorities district-wide at sites with no money left. We did not do that this time. We're doing priorities district-wide. You may also decide that you'd like to see a study at a different site. That's another possibility. I mean, we're open to whatever the board wants to do, but we do have a mandate to reduce our carbon footprint that we're going to have to accomplish, or I imagine at some point in time there's going to be some sort of sanctions.
Well, I think regardless of the sanctions, we need to reduce our carbon footprint, period. So that's an admirable goal, and I think it's a goal that I hope that we would all share. And so, as I said, it's just it's an important project for us to really give some thought to, and I think the information has helped.
And you may want to wait until Susan Deacon returns and she can weigh in. Postponing something a little while is not going to really change that much. I know that she had a high interest in this project, and she may want to weigh in on the discussion.
I am excited to see this come to us. I think that it doesn't matter if we do it today or if we do it in 4 or 5 years, there's going to be a high cost up front. And that's the trend that we've seen. So I would be supportive of considering this and thinking about how to move forward. But I do note something that I think has come up now twice in the last month, which is going back to how we all think about priorities for the districts with our bond money. And I don't want to ignore that, because I think that it's come up with different projects, and if we need to revisit our understanding of that, then I think we should. And if we need to get more regular updates on how the money is moving, then I think that would be helpful, because I think this is a good project, but I am hearing, and I have heard, concern over, well, what does this take away from? And because it does. It's going to take from some other priority. And I think I can probably go out on a limb and say that we are all very thoughtful when it comes to making sure that there is some equity, even though it's district priorities, that there is equity based, I think, first and foremost on need. You mentioned the roof part needing replacement, and so to me, there's really no ands if or buts. It's a must-do on that end, and I would hate for us to see other types of damage in the classroom, outside of the classrooms, related to our students that could cost us in other ways. And so I would like to see this considered seriously, but I would recommend that maybe we see more regular reports on the bond money, because this seems to keep coming up. So, Mr. Herron?
You just made a good observation. Yes, the roof may be in bad condition, but do we have other campuses that a roof is also in bad condition? And therefore, which is the worst condition? How do you prioritize which roof to do first? This one we're talking about, but I don't know, are there other buildings that have bad roofs?
There are other buildings district-wide that also have bad roofs. This last summer, we replaced roofs at Cleveland. This summer, we'll be replacing some roofs at Peabody. This roof, you could put off a couple of years and do some more patching. We have a gym roof at this site that is also in need of replacement.
I would be interested in some analyzation of what roof is most important. I mean, this is great, but is this the most important roof to use the money from, right now?
Okay.
Any other comments? Thank you. Yes.
Just might add one thing, sorry. One of the things too is there's a little discussion about timelines in there, and that the rebate timelines don't necessarily match up very well with DSA's timelines. So anyway, one of the ideas is that the quicker you can kind of get this process started and get ready to construct, you'll be better equipped to meet the SCE's fairly tight timelines in terms of, especially with the project being potentially proposed going on the roofs, taking a little longer at DSA, et cetera. So there is also that component that's part of the report as well.
Great. Thank you for mentioning that, because actually that is important to keep in mind. So thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on, item F3.
Yeah, we're going to pull F3, both Board Policy 5030, student wellness. We're obtaining some additional information regarding that. And then the Board Policy Administrative Regulation 6181, we're just getting finalizing a legal opinion on some issues related to a conflict between CSBA and the Ed Code about programs of choice. So we'll bring those forward in the March 13th meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. And moving to item F4, discussion of Assembling Bill 2444, interdistrict transfers. So is that Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. Assembly Bill 2444 actually was enacted January of 2011. And essentially what that does, it contradicts what some current policy states that we have in the district, particularly Board Policy 5117 related to interdistrict transfers. The Assembly Bill essentially states that students who are approved on an inter-district transfer from other districts would no longer have to reapply for renewal of that inter-district permit, but be allowed to continue in the district of attendance through their high school term, through 12th grade, without having to have the renewal. It also states that students who are on a transfer, well, let me back up on that a little bit. Unless the districts reach an agreement to stipulate otherwise. Okay, in other words, to continue our current practice, we would need to reach an agreement with the other districts that states that these are the conditions, the criteria for qualifying and maintaining an interdistrict transfer permit. But even under those conditions, the Assembly Bill 2444 stipulates that students who are approved on a interdistrict permit would be allowed to remain in the district of attendance if they're entering the 11th and 12th grade, and it would not be revocable during those 2 years. So basically to allow them to finish their final 2 years of high school if they're on an interdistrict permit. Right now, we do not have any agreements with the other districts that are those umbrella type agreements that state those conditions or criteria for maintaining an interdistrict permit or even approving them. Our policy states, of course, that we do not approve those except for extreme circumstances or particular circumstances. There's an annual discussion about what we should be doing about that policy, but this bill sort of established some policy for us in terms of what we can do with our current permits that are in place. So essentially, this item for conference here and discussion about maybe what you want to do as a board in terms of entering agreements with other districts that creates that umbrella policy with them or agreement with them on how to handle the permits that we do have in place right now.
All right. Ms. Cordero.
We have not had a discussion of whether or not we want to change our interdistrict transfer policy in a while. And it seems, well, I'm just wondering, if we were to change it, the policy to re-allow interdistrict transfers, would we still need to have a discussion about this?
Yes.
Okay. And if we have this discussion and we change it after that, would it negate what we've decided, or those will still be in place? Because the issue here is the issue here is whether or not to establish agreements with surrounding districts that would allow us to require a student to reapply each year.
Basically, what we would be doing now, unless if this with the policy as it is, if we wanted to maintain our current practice or policy of being able to revoke transfers and the conditions for revoking, we would need this umbrella agreement. And if we change the policy to continue or to allow and expand our criteria for accepting interdistrict transfers, this would the umbrella agreement would still be in effect, and we would still need it at that point.
Okay. So, but I just want to make it clear, at this point, we are not discussing whether or not to change the policy.
Right.
Okay.
All right, and I think we do have public comments, so we're going to go ahead and take public comment, and we'll come back to board comments.
Right. Nancy Black, followed by Nick Tonkin.
Hi, thanks for your clarification. The item on the board was not very specific, and I'm a parent at Open Alternative School, and as you know, transfers are an issue that affects us very closely. We lost a third of our student body when the decision was made to go to basic aid and no longer accept interdistrict transfers. We're a school of choice, and our students have typically come from around the district, and now the kids who live a block away or several blocks away can no longer attend our school. And you know how the district lines are drawn. They're very strange, and it's put us in a really tricky place. So we would love to have transfer students come back. We have a lot of families who, it's as if our community has been torn apart. I know a lot of kids who would love to come back, a lot of families who would love to come back. And it's very sad for us that they can't right now. So I was prepared to speak for that, but I see that that's not the issue at hand right now. When it is, I will come back and speak to that.
Thank you.
I request that, please, you bring that back to the table. Thank you.
Nick Tonkin.
So just a couple of things about inter-district transfers, which I've spoken to you about on numerous occasions, including later this evening. I spoke today with the County Education Office, Financial Services Department, ascertained that their projection for the Santa Barbara District next year is that we'll be out of basic aid, qualified by all the unknowns, which we know about. We know about the unknowns, so including RDA money and so on and so on. But at the moment, the county is projecting that the Santa Barbara District will be out of basic aid for next year. At that point, it'll be, of course, financially beneficial to the district to accept students from other districts, such as Goleta, Hope, etc., where we historically have had our student body drawn from. I note in your policy here that was pulled on F3, but I just want to quote, when an alternative class group, this was the alternative education item that was pulled, when an alternative class group is established within a school, the superintendent or designee shall ensure that students currently enrolled in the school will not be displaced. Of course, we were an alternative school 3 years ago, and many of our students were displaced through that policy. And the financial situation has now apparently reversed itself. No justification for the policy. We really urge you to revisit the interdistrict transfer policy. We have just talked a lot about carbon footprints, the mandate for the school district to reduce its carbon footprint. You may be interested to know that any student that lives within walking or biking distance of open alternative school cannot attend that school. You have to drive to OAS, because if you live in the Hope district, which surrounds it, you're ineligible to go there. So it's just a crazy situation. Students in the secondary part of our district that are served by the middle school at OAS are, of course, eligible to be there. So there were families that I can identify by name whose elementary age kids were turfed out, and the older ones were able to stay, and then the elementary kids can come back, I guess, after a couple of years into the middle school. It's just ridiculous. So given all those factors, and given the fact that it's coming up for review with this rather minor administrative detail, I'd like to ask the board to reconsider the interdistrict transfer policy before the upcoming school year, and particularly in view of the fact that current projections are that your district will not be in basic aid for next year. Let me repeat that so that you're sure to hear it. That your district will not be in basic aid for next year, and therefore accepting students from other districts will be financially beneficial to our district as it was for all those years before. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herron.
I understand totally the problem. I guess the question would be, did the county say anything about the following year, the following year, the following year? One of the things we've been told many times is we could go in and out of basic aid, and the worst thing that can happen is we allow it 1 year, and then that triggers us out of basic aid the following year if we're, in fact, we're going to be a basic aid district. So we need that discussion, we need that, but with all the unknowns, RDA, the election, you name it, I can't see that change being made for the next school year. I mean, it would, to me, be illogical to make it for the next school year just based upon potentially being out of it for 1 year. So it's going to be a hard decision to make. I'm in favor of interdistrict transfers. I always have been. But it is an economic decision, really, and we just need to have the numbers and be able to analyze it.
Ms. Parker?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Herron. The worst thing that we could possibly do is start bouncing around our families and going back and forth with a decision on interdistrict transfers in general, and whether or not we allow them, especially with the RDA issue and with the governor's tax proposals in November. I think it'll be at least the fall before we have any ideas for maybe even for the 12-13 school year about whether or not we're basic aid. And it could be years where we're going back and forth, and I do not want us to put our families in that kind of position. So I anticipate that we can't even really talk about this in any serious way until probably a year from now, and even then it may just be like, FYI, we don't know. But in terms of this piece, I guess my first question is, 40 elementary students, 65 secondary students, are these mostly children of employees?
Well, I'd have to really look into that to tell you for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know there is a fair number of students that are employees, children.
So if we if we don't put any parameters on this, I guess, I mean, in my mind, I want these students that are here, they're already here under our current policy, which we have no plans to change, and I wouldn't want to boot them out. And I guess my only question is this, with the way we have the policy set up now, does it mean that we couldn't rescind an interdistrict transfer based on, say, attendance or behavior issues unless we
Right.
come up with these agreements?
The new bill basically does not allow us to revoke a transfer
Well,
without
then,
that agreement with the other districts.
I would like us to go ahead and move to set up the agreements in that case, but I would want it to be, I mean, the one agreement that I think that we've seen is the one out of Los Olivos.
That's the one,
that
right,
we've had
and
an
they
agreement
actually
with.
initiated that one with us last year.
And I think theirs is really draconian, and I would like us, if we move forward, just to limit it down to things like truancy and tardy and behavior issues, and not to the extreme that they went to in terms of making it even harder for families to come back if there's, or making it easier, in other words, for them to rescind transfers constantly. And I just don't want to do it unless we really, really, it's detrimental, frankly, for the student to stay, that they would be better served to someplace closer to their home.
We can certainly get examples of districts that have entered into agreements and give you some language if that's the will of the board.
Mr. Herron?
Yeah. Refresh my memory. We have an employee with a child at one of our schools. So the child can, and she lives, or he lives in Ventura. So that child can continue at our school.
Yes.
As long as that person's employed.
Correct.
What happens when the person becomes unemployed? What if they leave our district and teach someplace else? What happens? But they want to keep the child at the school. Can they?
Well, our current policy would not allow for an interdistrict transfer under that condition.
So our current policy says if we grant one for any reason, if that reason no longer is valid, we can
Rescind it.
rescind it. But under this law, we can't.
Right.
So a teacher who brings the child in at kindergarten and leaves the next year can keep their child in our school district until 12th grade, under this
Correct.
law.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless we enter those agreements.
In those agreements. I think we need to enter agreements of some nature.
I think so too. I just wanted to say, I'd like to see some drafts, as Ms. Parker was suggesting, because I do think we should at least pursue what those agreements would be.
One other
Mr.
thing.
Herron?
The cases where our ruling gets overturned by the County Board of Education, is that overturned just for that 1 year? Do those have to come back to us the next year and go through our process again? Or once the county overrides us, they continue on until they graduate?
Well, in the cases of the permits that we've had the county overturn already, we have renewed them on the same grounds that they were overturned for to begin with. So
If
up
the
till
situation
now,
changes, if the situation changes, do we have a right to look at them again? And
we can.
okay.
Yeah. And up till now, we've had the ability to require renewal every year.
But under this law, we don't.
Right.
And likewise, I would agree that we should probably look at some language and some drafts. I think some parts of this make, for me, a lot of sense. I think the 11th and 12th grade piece to this makes sense. I do have a question about this, and I don't know if you know the answer now off the top of your head, but how many districts are we talking about?
10.
10.
We have
okay.
10. We have 105 students out of 10 districts.
Okay. Do you happen to know who those might be
I
besides
do.
our local ones?
I do. Let me get to the correct page here. For the K6 sites, we have Goleta, Hope, Lompoc, Oxnard, Santa Maria, Ventura, Carp, Santa Ynez, Lucimar, and that's it. Something called total.
All right. Okay.
And then for the secondary, we have Carp, Lompoc, Ventura, Winnemi, Oxnard, and Santa Ynez.
All right, great. And on the general topic of interdistrict transfers, I think it's probably worth a conversation. Again, it's an item that keeps coming up, and if anything, so we could have we could provide some clarity to our community on where we stand or how we're thinking about it. My fear is that because we do keep jumping in and out of basic aid, that we then in turn do to our students what the state is doing to us, which is put us in a very unstable situation. And I think that I worry about that because I think I mean, conceptually, I think including students in our school community is not a bad thing. I actually think it's a good thing, but after the conversation we had today, doing it in a situation where the funding is limited and we don't know what next year will look like, and even if we thought we knew what next year would look like today, in 2 months it can look very different. And so I think that that's one of the things that I believe to be true as far as the history that I've seen in the last few years. It really does jump, and there's a lot of inconsistency. So, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to have a conversation about interdistrict transfers, because I think that it comes up quite frequently. Any other comments?
You may have noted, though, if I could real quick on the documents I provided you, that the agreements that we would enter into with other districts will last for 5 years. Okay, so once we establish that and students are coming in under those conditions would apply for 5 years and then renewed or corrected, changed, or modified in some way at that point if we chose to do that.
Thank you.
Are you going to go back to closed session?
All right. Oh, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sumter. We do have a consent item that we need to go back to, which is D3, the safety plans. We initially thought D3, D7, D9, but we have now covered D7 and D9. So we'll go back to D3. Mr.
Yeah.
Herron?
Yeah, I pulled it for the same comments. I've pulled it probably every year that we've done it. Dr. Cash, in his opening remarks tonight, rightfully so, said that safety is our #1 priority at our schools. And these annual safety programs are supposed to be an implementation of that. And 95% of it is boilerplate. The one page that does bring some individuality to it is the annual safety goals, where the school sites can actually list some goals, which is a worthy thing. But when you read them, I can't say there's a lot of thought and effort going into many of them. A lot of them use, I found one that was 2006 to 2009 data. One used the district, the county CHKS, the Healthy Kids Survey, which has no bearing whatsoever to that local school. I would much rather have seen them use, if they have yardsticks, don't use the county as a yardstick, use their school as a yardstick. A lot of them had, we're going to reduce bullying by 5%. We had 10 cases last year. 5% is a half a student. So we're going to be satisfied if we go from 10 to 9.5. Or 27, 5% of 27 is a 1.3 decrease. So we're going to go down to 25 something. As an example of good, I would look at La Cumbre, I would look at Dos Pueblos, I would look at La Cuesta. I think there's a lot of thought going into those. One school council, site council said, hey, principal, you write it, and passed a motion to that effect. I don't know, I just think that I've always thought there needs to be more thought, and some of them have baselines but no numbers, and they just want to change. It's not, oh, we're going to change. If safety is #1 and bullying, I mean, I just received from the, maybe you all saw it too, but the School Board Association, a 154-page document on safe schools, strategies for governing boards. I mean, it just goes on and on of things we can do to do safe schools. And I know we do. I know the schools work on it. I know they have efforts at it. I just don't think it's identified in these safe school programs. But I'll move to approve the item, whatever it is.
D3.
D3. I'll move to approve D3.
And I'll second it. I do want to appreciate your comments, Mr. Heron, particularly the idea of looking at La Cumbra's and Dos Pueblos's safety plans as examples, I think, because they really did put a lot of thought into it. And I want to give a shout out to Jorge Folco and Michael Alvarez, who were responsible for running those safety committees at each of their sites. And I really felt like they used that as a real community discussion that would be useful for other schools to say, oh, I can do that. It doesn't have to be just the same information that I put in last year, that they really think about it and think about ways to improve site safety. Beyond, I mean, the school safety plans are, we don't have them here, but they're these, if you actually look at them physically. Oh, we have them back here, okay. They're enormous, and we have all these sites to look through. And a lot of it is just the same language over and over again because you follow the same procedures at each of the sites. But I do think that they're an opportunity that shouldn't be missed.
I was just gonna, sorry, I know, I was debating whether I wanted to say this or not. At the risk of incurring the wrath of my colleagues, I actually was thinking that I would like to see us have some discussion with the schools, somewhat like we do with the school single site plans. It doesn't have to be lengthy, and maybe it could just focus on the goals. But I agree with Mr. Heron that these are really important, and to approve them sort of, en masse on the consent calendar, to me feels like we don't mean to trivialize it, and it's not an indication that we don't think it's important, but it feels like that. And so I'm just wondering if there might even be like just a workshop or something at which we can interact and ask questions of the various, like you could raise your question about why use dated material or why use the county as the yardstick. And maybe, every other year or something like that. Doesn't necessarily have to be annual, but I would like to see them get a little bit more attention.
Ms. Parker?
And I would agree with that. Maybe it says something to do for next year, especially after they've had a chance to see what good role model templates.
Well, and maybe we could stagger them, do, elementary one year and secondary the next year, so that we're not doing all of them.
And I would just add that we opened up this meeting listening to Dr. Cash's comment about what happened in Ohio. So I don't take lightly by any means safety. And I know this morning, as soon as I got to UCSB, a parent came to me and asked me about our school guidelines on discipline and safety. And so I was talking to a parent who was concerned. And so I do think that we should think about this as a very important and serious matter. They are long. If no one's ever seen a safety plan, they're long. So I appreciate that there should be some uniqueness for every site, because I think that one of the things we've learned nationwide is that unfortunately there's not much we can do after the fact. But if we think about, if we discuss and really have plans in place to make sure that our campuses are safe communities for our students, ahead of time, I think that we can prevent some situations from occurring. And I think we've been very lucky in Santa Barbara that we have not experienced what some other school districts have experienced in the country. And so I like the idea of maybe staggering 1 year and talking to our schools about it so that we're all on the same page on how important this is. Mr. Heron?
As I said earlier, a huge part of those plans are just a regurgitation of our policies, which is fine. We have policies, okay, so we have a lot of policies. And I hope we're following them, and I hope but I just printed out the page regarding annual safety goals for each school. And anybody can look at those and look at them and say, something's wrong. There's not a lot of attention to this aspect of it. The boilerplate says, we're going to give you 2 goals. And yes, we've had at least 3 brief meetings to review the data. Every school had 3 brief meetings at least. A lot of the schools did 2 goals, because that's what the instructions say to do, I guess. There were some special schools that took it above and beyond that, and there was special committees that took it above. I'd like to hear from the special committees as to what went through the process, and how they came about. How involved were the parents? How involved were the teachers? And how did they arrive at their end product? And I'd just like to maybe hear from those as an example of those that are doing it right.
So I do believe we have a motion and a second. So I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0, 1 absent, and that was the D3 safety items. Moving on to future agenda items. Board, any future agenda items we'd like to see come back to us or come to us? Yes, Ms. Parker?
A huge community discussion last year around our English learners in the district, and particularly around reclassification rates. And I think that there's been some really positive movement on reclassification. I think it's important for the board and the community to hear about what's happening with reclassification in the district. So I'd love to see that come back as a conference item.
Thank you. Mr. Herron?
I'd like an update, either board brief or where we stand on the Spanish translation for our meetings. I know it must be close, but I'd love a point, some type of response. And Ms. Monique mentioned earlier tonight, Cox Cable is changing their ability to see these programs. You have to have digital equipment starting March 1st, and maybe a lot of our people don't have it. We need to look at that to see how many people might, even though we have it in Spanish, maybe the audience won't be able to see it. And I don't know enough about Cox's new program to understand it totally, but we should find out about it, and that might be more of a reason to, at least in the future, look for streaming on our own website.
I'm pretty sure it's not Miss Monique, it's Dr. Monique.
Especially
Thank you, Dr. Parker. No, it's not Dr. Monique. Anything else? All right. So with that, anything, Dr. Cash, you'd like to add before I adjourn?
No?
Dr. Cash? All right. So with that, I adjourn the meeting.